the robe belt in his coat, the night the mirror wrote our names. At 9:11 p.m., I put my hand in his coat and pulled out a belt that didn't belong to anything he owned. It was the sash of a hotel robe, thick, soft, still warm with the way cloth remembers a body. The knot had been done twice and worried once, as if someone had tied it in laughter, then tugged it free with a softer kind of insistence. On one end, embroidered in tidy navy letters, was a name that didn't owe anyone an explanation: the Carrick. I stood in our hallway with the belt in my palm and thought of all the things that want to be harmless and fail. Hotel robes, complimentary limes, the kind of apology that assumes you'll meet it halfway. The kitchen was 2 rooms away and smelled faintly of cinnamon from a joke of a dessert I'd been warming for him. Ambition folded into sugar like we were auditioning for domesticity. There are moments you know will become explanation later if you let them. I slid the belt into my jacket pocket, turned off the oven, and left. The Carrick is the kind of hotel that teaches a city to look at itself. Brass that refuses to oxidize, plants with good posture, chairs that make you sit like an argument you're about to win. In the lobby, a piano played the absence of guilt. The concierge glanced at me with the professional mercy of someone who collects strangers' decisions for a living. I told him I was meeting a friend in the bar and walked toward the elevator with the confidence that buys you exactly 1 floor of invisibility at a time. On 12, the carpet hushed me into a better version of myself. I stopped 2 doors before 12:19 because I have learned how to breathe for 2 people when necessary. My thumb hovered over a text box that expected something small and careful. Instead, I slid the belt out and wound it once around my fist like I was asking my hand to memorize the shape of a promise. I don't know how I knew it was 12:19. You can argue with a lobby, but you can't argue with the way air changes in the corridor where you belong by accident. The handle clicked. A rectangle of light widened. Ethan stepped out with the delicate surprise of a man who's borrowed his own face for the evening. He pulled the door closed behind him with the tenderness he reserves for other people's libraries, not ours. "Ben," he said, my name with careful edges. "Your coat lent me something," I said. The belt rested across my palms like a confession. Everything else followed willingly. He looked at the carpet the way men try to look at themselves without the mirror. "Not here," he said. "Not beside a door we didn't pay for twice." He nodded down the hall. "There's a small terrace above the service street." The terrace was a glass rectangle with views of ductwork, the back of ambition, and the kind of staircase that convinces you every decision is reversible if you climb slowly. There was a round table that had heard confessions in every language it needed to. The night had the kind of weather that forgives but remembers. Ethan placed both hands on the rail and opened them as if he were unfolding a map he didn't trust. "I lied when I left," he said. He didn't try to make it interesting. "Rap happened. People kissed cheeks like signatures. Then I told Michael I needed air. I told myself I needed him." "Michael," I repeated, because names are handles and I prefer to hold on to something while the floor changes its mind. "Sound right. The one who hears the part you turn down." "Everybody hears the part I perform," he said. "He hears the part I haven't rehearsed enough to trust." "Are you sleeping with him?" There's no word that decorates that sentence without making it worse. He didn't try. "No," he said, quick, clean. Then lower, the truth that knows which muscle is responsible for pain. "I wanted to. I took my mouth with me." I had expected anger to do something grand, to heat the air, to change the color of brass, to become a weapon I could lift with one hand. But the body keeps useful secrets. My chest opened the way it does when a train comes and you're about to decide whether to board. I looped the robe belt around my fingers until the knot rested against my knuckles, a small, soft, ruinous stone. You always want to be loved for the part nobody else believes exists, I said. I fell in love with that part. The problem is you keep auditioning new witnesses. He looked up then, meeting me with the honesty he saves for the last take of the night. His mouth tipped toward my name. All the aggressive little lights below us kept pretending they belonged to other people. Somewhere, a back door shut like an edited line. I want to be chosen, he said. I'm a terrible judge when I choose alone. I won't be your security guard, I said, and I refuse to be your docent. Those are the only two jobs people offer when they hear marriage and panic in the same sentence. What do you want? He asked. Not some policy, not the speech you wrote for later. What do you want right now? I had words about daylight and curfews and phones that would be better behaved if you asked nicely. I'd said them before, and they had done their work. 2 nights a week stolen back from tiredness. A bench by the river where we let the water lie about being Paris. Transparency practiced until it stopped being a performance and became a habit. None of those words could make the belt in my hand irrelevant, or the way my lungs were learning a new shape. I want you where you actually are, I said, and I want you to want me enough to stop practicing elsewhere first. The belt slid against my palm like a temperature. He exhaled in the shape of my name. Behind him, the glass of the terrace reflected us back, thinner than truth, taller than consequence. There are stories where the conversation ends here and a door closes, and the city lets the elevator speak in numbers about what it knows. Ours did not end there. The body has uses for honesty that don't fit in the lines people write for it. He stepped forward, close enough for the breath between us to practice becoming a decision. Tell me to leave, he said, or tell me to undo what I did and come home, or tell me what you actually want. I had spent an hour inventing speeches in which I walked away and was admired for the choreography. The reality was shorter. I reached up, looped the belt around the back of his neck, not to pull him to me but to give my hand something to own while I tried not to lose the rest. He startled, not because of fear, but because this was not how we did things when we were certain. I felt the tremor run through him, a chord half played. I leaned close enough that the shape of words could occupy my mouth, without taking up residence anywhere else. I want you, I said plain, not the version the room borrowed. I want every unpracticed thing in you. I want you enough to demand we both be kinder than we've been tonight. His forehead rested against mine because the city insists on teaching people to be dramatic even when they're tired. I didn't move away. The belt hung between us like a sign we hadn't asked for and were now obliged to read carefully. He smiled with the part of his mouth that admits mistakes cost more than money. Michael doesn't do the thing you do, he said. What thing is that? You make not touching feel like a plot twist. There isn't a way to stop the body from telling the truth about what it wants without lying somewhere that will collect interest later. I tested the knot at the edge of the belt with my thumb. It was a little arrogant, ready to hold if you asked nicely. I ran the fabric along the inside of his wrist, not a command, not a prop, just a gentle echo of the way I wanted our next version of this to remember patience. The shiver he gave me back wasn't theatrical. It was the kind of small honesty you can build a better night out of, brick on brick, breath on breath. Come home, I said, and don't tell me anything else tonight. Leave the words for the morning, the kind that can stand daylight. I want you home enough to let the rest of this be unsaid until we know what to do with it. He nodded into the thin space between our mouths, then stepped away without looking toward the door. I let the belt rest on my palm until my hand recognized its own business again. We walked to the elevator without speaking. The mirror in the corner tried to write our names backward and failed. The floor numbers did their unimportant arithmetic. In the cab, we didn't touch. That is a sentence people misunderstand. We didn't touch because touching would have demanded we choose a future before the city was ready to be a witness. At home, the kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon. I set the belt on the counter next to 2 forks and a slice of warm patience. He leaned against the doorway like a page in a book you mean to put down when the paragraph ends but don't. "You're sure," he said. "You're not forgiving me just because you're good at it." "I'm not forgiving you," I said. "I'm choosing to want you before I decide what to call tonight." He came closer with a deliberate slowness that recognized the cost of anything he did in my direction. His hand found my waist with a carefulness that would have been insulting if it hadn't been necessary. I placed my palm flat against his chest, where the jacket rested like a new rule. His heartbeat was readable, steady like a line that has learned how to carry weight. "I love you," he said, not as a defense but as an inventory. "I hate who I am when I go looking for proof I'm still interesting." "Then let me be the person who reminds you you're more complicated than interesting," I said. "I'm greedy. I want the whole thing, the part of you that wants to be impressive and the part that wants to be forgiven and the part that is better than either." He laughed under his breath, a sound with an ache in it. He kissed me like he was afraid he had been mispronouncing my mouth for months and wanted to relearn the vowels carefully. I answered with the kind of slowness that asks future versions of us to please observe how much work this took. Not explicit, not performative, warm, weighted, just our bodies negotiating in a language they still both spoke. We didn't undress each other completely. We didn't need to. He was relief made warm, the kind that knows how to ask permission without stopping, like a hand finding the right speed for honesty. I pressed him back against the edge of the counter and felt his breath change, then steady, then change again, all those small geographies of agreement. The belt's tassel brushed the back of my wrist where it still rested on granite, a little accidental reminder that certain nights will never owe you discretion, only effort. When we finally stepped apart, it was not because we had run out of anything worth doing, but because we had run out of the part of the night that would let us do it fairly. He put his forehead to mine again, softer now, less apology and more gratitude. "I don't know how to be a better version of me yet," he said. "I know how to be this one, but I want to learn the other way." "You will," I said, and I didn't say it like a benediction or a promise. I said it like a hope that had paid a deposit. "We'll argue tomorrow, in daylight, in real sentences. Tonight is for wanting and keeping ourselves from using words as weapons while our mouths are too interested in other work." We ate the cinnamon thing standing up because it would have felt arrogant to pretend the table could handle this conversation better than we were. He grinned with sugar on his lower lip. I licked it away and decided this, too, was a very small miracle. Later, in the dark, we slept the kind of sleep that feels like a provisional agreement. Not sainthood, not cowardice. Just 2 men who had not abandoned the part of themselves that still insisted on building doorways where other people collected walls. In the morning, the belt sat on the counter like the preface to a book we had to admit we'd read ahead. He made coffee. I opened the windows. The world did not care about our timeline. It rarely does. We sat with our mugs and our mouths and the quiet that knows it has already earned its keep. He started to speak. I put 2 fingers on his wrist and asked him to take one more breath. "Tell me after we go for a walk," I said. "Tell me after we remember we like the same bakery and the same stupid bench, and the fact that pigeons believe there are rules. Tell me after the city gives us the kind of weather that agrees to be simple for an hour. He smiled with that grave joy that chose me when there were other elevators. We left the belt where it was. We left the apartment with our hands doing nothing heroic. And as the door clicked behind us, it sounded like any other door in any other life that might be hard and might be worth it, and might tell its own story to the person who needs to hear it most. I didn't forgive him in that hallway. I haven't forgiven him yet. Forgiveness is a daylight word and mornings have their own gravity. But I wanted him on the edge of a cheap countertop. In the kitchen we bought salt for together, with our mouths insisting we still spoke the same language even if we'd been using it badly. Desire is not the opposite of anger. Sometimes it is the evidence that you still have enough to lose. Later we would talk about Michael and the belt and whether guest codes meant anything more than laziness disguised as hospitality. Later, we would decide whether to uninstall every app that thought it was allowed to write our conversations in metal and light. Later, we would pick a rule for our own bones. But for a few hours, until the sun made its indifferent choices across the building's opposite hours, we practiced wanting where we lived, and the wanting, for once, behaved. The city outside pretended, as usual, to be the only witness that mattered. I let it. The mirror over our sink did what all mirrors do, wrote our names backward in a hand that refuses to learn grammar. I didn't mind. I knew how to read it already. And the door, when we came back from our walk, opened like the promise we had managed to keep overnight. Not the room, not the lobby, not the hotel, not even the one our phones would prefer. Just ours, enough to let us in. Enough to make a morning, even a complicated one, feel like something you can stir into sweetness if both of you stand there, warm, greedy, and honest, while it melts.